Tremendous episode of Sportszone. I am your host, Connor Hibbett, joined by some tremendous analysts and Adam C. and Mason Branham. We're going to discuss some UNT softball today. We just won against UTSA. We won 2-1, so we stole the series from our little sister, if you will. So Adam, I'm going to start with you. Who were the stars of this game in the first game?
Bit of heat there calling them little sisters, but hey, just to be honest, Kaylee Gamble, she went 1 of 2 with a home run and a walk, scored 3 runs totals, 2 RBIs, and Michaela Smith, she had that power. Power was the name of the game. 2 homers, 6 RBIs. She looked great. Michaela Smith played absolutely awesome in the first game.
And Mason, who were your stars of the first game?
For me, it was actually the catcher, Christensen. She went 3 for 3 with those 2 RBIs, 2 runs and a walk. And honestly, she's kind of been the backbone of this lineup. I mean, whenever you have her in the lineup, she's always coming through with those big hits and those big moments. And having a player like that to be able to come through the game and score those key runs and get those key hits is always going to be good for the team.
And incredibly efficient, too. 4 plate appearances, and getting on base 4 times. That's the type of play you need for this team if you want to go far.
And it was a 10-8 victory, so the offense was obviously clicking. The hitting was really efficient. But the pitching gave up 8 runs. So, gentlemen, I want to hear your thoughts. And Mason, I'll start with you this time. How do you think the pitching did?
Well, I mean, in a game like this, yes, you may look at the pitching and say it wasn't the greatest, but you had the offense to back it. So, honestly, going into one of these games, I think it's kind of like, yeah, you don't really have the performance you want to have, but you can kind of get away with it a little bit with the offense having the kind of game they had. And I just think maybe going forward, there's just something to look at, but nothing to worry about that much for this kind of game.
I certainly agree there. Wagoner did not have the greatest game. She gave up 6 hits and 7 runs in just 4 innings. Savage had to come in 4, and she struggled a little bit. She went through 2 wild pitches and 3 walks very early. But after the 5th inning, she recovered really well, made sure the Mean Green could get the win. Yes.
So she lived up to her last name, being a Savage, you could say.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Savage.
And then the second game, we won 6-1, so the pitching turned a corner here. It was a lot better. So who do you think were the stars of this game in terms of not just the hitting, scoring 6 runs, having that 5-run margin in the victory, but also the pitching? Who do you think really stepped up here?
Mackenzie Childers pitched a complete game. She was dealing like Vegas, giving up only 3 hits a run with 13 total strikeouts. Just absolutely phenomenal game from her. And if you want to talk offense, once again, Kaylee Christensen, MVP of Game 1, could be the MVP of Game 2, hitting a homer and walking 2 times on base in 4 plate appearances. Just absolutely phenomenal play from her.
And Mason, what are your thoughts on that 6-1 victory?
I mean, obviously, going into Childers' game, she had a heck of a game. Being able to go throw a complete game and only giving up 3 hits with those 13 strikeouts is very big. But looking at the offense, 2 people that stuck out to me were Morgan Medford and Sierra Simon. I mean, Medford went 2 for 4 with an RBI, scored a run. Simon went 1 for 2 with an RBI and a run. And having those 2 players coming in at the 2nd and 9 spots in your lineup kind of shows how balanced this lineup can be. And I think having a balanced lineup is better than having maybe only like 1 or 2 people being able to get all the hits while everybody struggles. So having that balance, I think, is going to be key for this team.
And there was certainly a lot more balance in the third and last game of the series. It was a 4-2 loss, unfortunately for us. But the pitching wasn't terrible. But who were your MVPs of that third game despite the loss?
MVPs of the third game, I got to be honest, we came out that first inning and we had really good first inning, then we didn't do anything beyond that. I got to go with Kaylee Gamble, 2-run blast, put us up 2-0. That really could have spurred on something, but unfortunately it didn't. And we just slowly gave the lead up, couldn't do much beyond that.
Mason, who do you think was the most valuable player in that third
For
matchup?
me, I think it was Kat Ibeira, having that leadoff spot, going for 2 for 3, scoring that run in the first off the homer. I think having a leadoff guy, I mean, the typical leadoff role is to be able to get on base so that your later hitters can score. And I think being able to have a quality leadoff hitter in Ibeira can be really key. And I think if she continues this kind of performance, I think she's going to be great for this team.
And Ibeira was also a really solid contributor in Game 2 as well. Kind of came alive in that second half of the series, 2 or 3 for 1 run in Game 2. It's been a solid contributor for the Mean Green. And think about Game 3, it was a winnable game. Pitching had ups and downs, but they didn't have the run support, which is the key here. The offense had to pick it up a little bit, and they couldn't do that.
Now, what do you think the team's looking like for conference play moving forward? Or do you feel confident that this team can maybe make a run this season?
Well, I will say this: right now they're 5-1 in conference. They swept Eastern Carolina, swept the Pirates to start the year, and they could have swept UTSA, but they didn't. Right now they're looking real solid. Keep this sort of play up. You could maybe see a tide turn. Could maybe go somewhere in the tournament. I know that UNT has lofty goals this year, so I think they have a chance.
And Mason, now coming off that UTSA victory with that series, we obviously looked improved as a team. We seem like we keep improving. The loss yesterday, I don't think really reflects the total picture of the season so far. We beat East Carolina, who came into the game, I believe they were 21-2 overall. Of course, they had a little bit of a soft non-conference. But I want to discuss our overall record so far right now. What do you think it means, even though we don't have like a 21-2 kind of record, obviously, but do you think that we are still as good, or do you think we're better than our overall record right now?
Well, I could say that we might be actually better than our overall record. I mean, especially looking at that last UTSA game, that was a winnable game. There was just some mishaps. I mean, one of the main issues going to that game was your 2 through 7 hitters were only 2 for 16, including that home run by Gamble. But there's been a lot of games this year where there's a lot of kind of winnable games that maybe if 1 or 2 things go our way, we win instead of lose. So I think looking at the schedule, yes, it's going to be kind of tough going into conference play. I mean, we're 5-1 right now, but I think if you can keep the controllable controlled, I think they're going to be a good team. It's just having those common mistakes and errors sometimes that can kind of lead the team into those losses. But I think just going into this season, it's going to be one of those games where it's going to be, hey, you got to win, take 2 out of 3, take 2 out of 3. If they can consistently take 2 out of 3, I think this is going to be a team to beat.
When it comes down to overall record, let's be honest here, UNT does tend to beef up that out-of-conference schedule a little bit. Lots of high-ranked teams, lots of power conference teams. You know, Auburn, Northwest, number 14 Missouri at the time. A lot of more high-up schools in terms of finances, to say the least. And UNT competes with them. UNT does work, but can't expect the record doesn't reflect where we are now. And I think we got a solid team. Again, forget about the beginning of the season. Short memory, just goals to go into every game and go 1-0. That's it.
And I think a great thing for UNT softball so far this season, like you mentioned, Adam, has been the non-conference schedule. It can get you prepared for the long term because it helps your team become more competitive in that way. So looking forward, I mean, a team like ECU, they start the season off very well, and then they kind of start slow in conference play. And then a team like us, we don't break through like East Carolina did to start the season, but then you get into conference play, and it's like, oh my gosh, maybe these records don't truly reflect these teams. So Mason, you talked about control what you can control, which is the opponents on your schedule. So how do you think we fare against the future opponents, and then what is your total outlook for this team moving forward?
Well, I think obviously, yeah, controlling the controllable is something you need to always look into. And I mean, one of the things that you can't control is the people that you play. And I think, honestly, with these tough opponents, I think it also not only does it give you like a sense of who the team is, but I think it kind of gives you a sense of that competition level that we can play at. I mean, yes, maybe you don't necessarily get a win against a tough opponent, but being able to go into those tough opponent games and maybe only losing by 1 or 2 runs instead of getting a blowout like everybody expects, I think that kind of goes into the character of this team. And I think if they continue to build on that as well as controlling the controllable, I think that's going to be something that leads to the success. And I can honestly see them making the tournament and maybe even the World Series. And
to bounce off of that, speaking of going into these higher ranked teams, only losing by 2 or 3, it teaches you adversity. East Carolina came in 21-2. That's great. They had a lot of confidence. I don't doubt that they had the confidence. The problem is you're not going to face adversity whenever you're facing lower tier teams let's say that they're going to face, some random podunk school in D2. That's not going to prepare them for anything. What UNT did going against Missouri, Auburn, Northwestern, they're preparing, and whenever they face adversity, they're going to have a better chance of being able to go back against it and pull off some wins.
And we see oftentimes in college baseball and college softball, the better teams, the teams who make the deeper runs, they play in the tougher conferences. Coming up next on Sports Zone, we're going to discuss some of the Dallas Mavericks games. So please stay with us.
I'm here to rescue you. my friends.
No sofás.
This story is going to be awesome.
Ugh, a 20-minute walk? I don't want to do this right now.
Don't worry, you can just use Transit.
Transit? What's that?
Transit is a mobile app that provides real-time tracking to connect buses, UNT shuttles, and even A trains. Simply download the app, then tap on the search bar and type where you want to go. In a matter of seconds, you get results for all available routes. And the best part of it is, it's completely free for UNT students. What are you doing?
I'm downloading it right now.
Download Transit today and remember, make life better without a car.
Did you know you have access to video equipment like DVDs, video games, and cameras? That's right, you do. Come on down to Chilton Library and fulfill your media dream. Located on the bottom floor next to the student sculpture. Hope to see you there soon.
Hey girl, you know you look good. I like the way you move and groove. I'm not sure.
I'm so tired. I feel ugly. I'm not okay. I didn't know UNT had counseling services. Maybe I should check it out. This looks like the place.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Sportszone. I've got Gabe Ife and Gabby Pippins here to discuss the Dallas Mavericks' most recent game against the Denver Nuggets. Now speaking of Nuggets, we're going to give you all some little sports nuggets about the game. So Gabe, I'm going to start with you. What is your main takeaway from this game?
I have a couple main takeaways, a couple challenges and some successes, some good things, some bad things. I kind of want to start off with Kyrie Irving. Obviously, game winner. He came up so clutch. Just that shot, that left-handed hook was just amazing. You know, kind of looking at a little bit of the bench, we'll get into this more later. Derek Lively was amazing, 7 of 8 from the field. You know, it's really great to see his shooting form just improve and just keep on going as good as he is going into the playoff stretch run, which we'll talk about. And then holding Jokic to under 40% from the field was amazing. We'll get into the defense later, but that was really big. So those are kind of my successes. If we want to get challenges later, we can.
Gabby, what were your overall thoughts of the Nuggets' victory? Or the Dallas Mavericks' victory against the Nuggets?
Yeah, I thought it was great. You know, this was definitely one of those back and forth games, but it ended in a success for the Mavs, 107 to 105. Very happy to see that, especially as a Mavs fan, but I do just want to focus on a couple of things that the Nuggets really threw at the Mavs. You know, they've just got a really good team chemistry, you know, especially the relationship between Jokic and Gordon. I know a lot of people sort of describe it as the telepathy that they have, where they can kind of make a certain move, look a certain way, and know to get open and get in the paint, and that's what led to their 44% field goal accuracy. And I just really thought that they did a great job of doing that. But on the flip side, I feel like the Mavs handled that really well. You know, they had Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford together scoring in the paint, getting those easy points. And obviously, you've talked about Kyrie, but Luka also had a really good performance. You know, he was really able to pull things together in the first half with 23 of his 37 points coming from that half. And that was really before Kyrie started to kind of get on fire. So I feel like he did a great job of pulling the team together and ending with 37 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists.
So the casual take so far this season has been that Kyrie and Luka do not play well together. However, when the way that they played towards the end against the Nuggets, I thought was fabulous. And I looked it up, and they actually had an offense that graded out 118.4. So in summary, that's really good. So I want to discuss not just the offense, but the defense. Now, the defense started a little bit slow, giving up 34 points in the first quarter, but then they kind of turned it around. What were some of those changes that you think the defense made to adjust to the Nuggets? Gabe, I'll start with you.
I'll start with kind of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic are the two main centerpieces of the Denver Nuggets. The point guard and big man combo is so rarely stopped. Coming from growing up as a San Antonio Spurs fan, I watched them destroy us as the Spurs one of the last times they were in the playoffs, and it just destroyed me growing up. But to see them hold those two players, which are league leaders, runners in the MVP every year, to under 40 points, I think is so key. And if you can stop two key cogs, Gabby mentioned earlier Michael Porter
Jr.
Michael Porter Jr. But if you can hold those two pieces and only let him shine, you're on key to have success, and that's what they did.
And Gabby, what were some of the changes that you noticed? Because in the third and fourth quarter, especially towards the end of the third quarter, early fourth quarter, that defense was as good as I've seen it all season long.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like they were really able to adjust, especially going into halftime with that 61-58 lead the Nuggets had. I feel like they really were just able to come together, figure out what they need to do and get those defensive stops in and just overall have a really great defensive game. They had 59 team rebounds, 38 of them being defensive. And then just overall for the team, they had 5 steals, 5 blocks, just great defense. And a lot of this does come from someone I've been talking about a lot, Derek Lively. I mentioned him in our first Sportszone whenever we were talking about new players that the Mavs got. And I was like, this guy is going to bring a lot of great field goals and a lot of great defense. And that is exactly what's happening right now. 14 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 out of the 5 total team blocks. So I feel like players like him, and also Luka had a really good defensive game. He also had a couple of steals in there. So I just feel like they were able to get together, figure out what they need to do to win the game.
Luka, to me, is like a very savvy defender. I think he's better than people give him credit for on that side of the basketball. But what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say one more thing was they held the Nuggets to 12 three-pointers, which isn't necessarily fantastic, but if you can hold teams in the NBA consistently to around 10 to 12, that's around 36, 30 points and three-pointers, and which NBA teams are scoring 100 plus, easily 100 plus a game. That is a really good stat. That's really key in making sure they aren't just jacking up threes all night and hitting them.
Yeah, the perimeter defense to begin the game was a little questionable, but again, we mentioned how they adjusted there. But let's also discuss the upcoming game against the Spurs. So obviously, we finished the game well against the Nuggets, so we have a chance. The Mavericks do. I say we. The Mavericks have a chance to sweep the Spurs for only the second time in franchise history. Up until a few years ago, that had never been done. So what do you think their chances are against the Spurs?
I think they're pretty good. I'll go ahead and start. I think they're pretty good. Watching the Spurs a little bit more than some people around here may. We aren't very good. The Spurs are a young team. They're gritty, but they just don't have the pieces yet. I would say the player that they need to look out for is Victor Wembanyama. He's been terrific all season, averaging 20 points, 10 rebounds, a steal on 3.5 blocks is the biggest thing. And so the matchup against Derek Lively and Gafford is just going to be fantastic to watch. So I think that's really the player they're going to need to watch out for. I think it's going to be more interesting than people think, especially coming off of a game against the Nuggets. There might be a little bit of a letdown, but I think ultimately the Mavs will pull away with it.
And then, Gabby, what are your thoughts for the Mavericks game against the Spurs?
Exact same thing. I mean, I don't want to say it's going to be an easy win, but I would be stunned if the Mavs didn't come away with a 20-point win. I mean, I think Wembanyama, he's definitely very talented. I can definitely see him to grow into an all-star player. But besides Wembanyama, there's not really any other all-star key players on that team. I mean, you've got Keldon Johnson. He came off the bench for 24 points and 5 rebounds against the Nets most recently. So that may be something that the Mavs need to watch out for. Definitely something that Lively and Gafford can handle. And speaking of their relationship with Wembanyama, I feel like 2 is obviously better than 1, right? And a lot of people call 2 of your big men on the team the Twin Towers. So I feel like these Twin Towers are really going to be able to, handle Wembanyama. I don't think that's going to be a big issue for the Mavs. So again, this should be pretty cut and dry.
Wemby has almost as many letters in his last name as he's had blocks per game on his average.
Wow.
He's currently on track to average the most blocks per game as a rookie in the NBA. The guy's just off the charts. So this is going to be a really challenging matchup for us, obviously. But with some of the changes that we made against the Denver Nuggets, and obviously our offense, which we've been leaning on this whole entire season. I keep saying we, as the Mavericks have been leaning on this whole entire season. I think there's a really good chance the Mavericks could potentially sweep the Spurs.
Well, and I'll tell you one more thing, looking a little bit bigger picture for the Mavericks. Their schedule is really open the rest of the way. They have a couple games against the Kings, which are right above them, and they have 2 games towards the end against Miami and Oklahoma City. But other than that, it's wide open for them to go in.
Well, a lot of great things to look out for in the NBA, and we have a lot of great things to look out for in college basketball as well. And we're going to be discussing the American Athletic Conference tournament coming up right here on Sportszone.
I'm so tired. I feel ugly. I'm not okay. I didn't know UNT had counseling services. Maybe I should check it out. This looks like the place. I'm so tired. I feel ugly.
Why should you join Talons?
We are very welcoming to people who may be a little bit hesitant. There's people currently right now in our organization who are in leadership positions who were hesitant before to join, and they found out that they just love the organization and wanted to be a bigger part of it. They post about the football games, everything they're doing, all their events that they host.
What's the best part about Talons?
I would say meeting new people, because the university, while it's a kind of small campus in terms of like physical land, there's a ton of people here. And so getting to meet all these people who have so much school spirit and love for this university and wants to spread that to other people, it's kind of like a little miniature family that we're in.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Sportszone. I'm your host, Connor Hibbett. I am joined here by Steven Lucero and Lidiana Reyes. We're going to discuss how UNT men's and women's performed in the AAC tournament. We'll start with women's. This was a team that had a breakthrough season this year. It's been one of the greatest turnarounds in all of women's college basketball this year. And then in the very first game, they lose a really hard-fought competitive game to one of our in-state rivals in Rice. Steven, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on that 61-59 loss for us?
Yeah, it was obviously a tough game. You know, I think their expectations were really high, especially after winning the regular season tournament. But this is where it matters. And, you know, they came out a little bit slow, and I think they just really, in the end, weren't able to recover.
And Lidiana, what were your takeaways from that loss?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they definitely, I expected them to win against Rice, and just because they were already a hot team. And so I just thought they were going to continue to move forward. But like you said, this is the time you have to show up. You can't just be not having your A game. Like, this is where it matters. That single elimination part of the postseason of college basketball is just it's a completely different animal than the regular season. Because in the regular season, it's a different kind of process. And then again, you got that single elimination, so you have to be A+ every single game, because every single other team is going to be bringing their A+ game. Obviously, some teams have higher ceilings than others, so you never really know what to expect. This is a Rice team, I just really quickly want to say, they had 9 conference losses in the regular season. 8 of those 9 losses were by single digits. Point here, they were better than their record. So what do you think it means for us to play in a competitive conference like the American Athletic, because you're going to be playing against tough teams day in, day out? So Lidiana, I'll start with you this time. What are your thoughts on the depth of our conference? Yeah, so honestly, I really thought they were going to, move on, but I think now we know they are officially in the NIT, and I think they have the experience. Like, they've played really good teams. We know they can beat really good teams, and so I think that being in this conference and going into the NIT, that they will do good, and hopefully they'll bring their A game this time.
Stephen?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think, it is a competitive conference, and I think this is, where it really matters. This is what separates really good regular season teams from great tournament teams. And, we had a great season. And I think, honestly, though, we were a little bit maybe hungover just from that last game. There was a lot of excitement, but I think we kind of took this game for granted. I think Rice was more hungry. They wanted it more, and they caught us off guard.
So Rice obviously went on to win the AAC tournament championship. They're going to get the auto bid into the NCAA tournament. So I want to ask each of y'all, had we beat Rice, which we were like the last shot rimmed out, it was right there.
Yep.
Had we won that game, do you think we would have gone on to win our tournament championship?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but I absolutely believe we could have. I still think that we are the most talented team in our conference. I think we won the regular season for a reason. But like I said, I think we were a bit unprepared. I think we were a bit sloppy, especially at the end of that game. There was a late turnover on an inbound pass, 2 key missed free throws. It just can't happen. And that's what separates championship teams in March from championship teams in the regular season. That clutchness and that ability to perform when it really matters most.
Lydiana, do you think we could have won the tournament had we beat Rice?
Yes, for sure. Obviously in the game, they struggled. They had multiple chances during this game to take the lead, but we know Desiree Colonel, she missed 2 free throws when she's like the nation's top leader in free throws, so that was really surprising. And then at the end of the game, they had a turnover that cost them the lead, and then of course the 3-pointer at the very end. So yeah, I think that if they would have cleaned it up, beat Rice, I think they would have went on and won the tournament.
And you look at our 1-year turnaround, what Jason Burton has done with this team and this program in just several short months has been nothing short of incredible. Last season we had 11 wins the entire calendar year, and then you look at this year and we went over 11 wins in half the season. So what do you think Coach Burton, and then of course a lot of our players, we have some returning, but we did have a lot of seniors on this past year's team, so we're probably going to be getting we're probably going to be getting girls from the transfer portal to make up for those losses. But what do you think Burton means for the future of this program? Lydiana, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, he does a great job at, like when he first came in, he brought, I think, 2 girls with him, and then he hit the transfer portal hard. So I have faith in him going into the transfer portal, bringing in good girls. But yeah, I think we need aggressive girls on the team.
And it's going to help if we especially got those experienced players through the transfer portal. And we did so this past season. That's what I'm saying. We're losing a lot of seniors. So it's not just because we had new players doesn't mean that they were inexperienced. They didn't forget how to suddenly play basketball just because they transferred schools. So hopefully we look for those experienced players in the transfer portal. Stephen, if we were to do that, if we get those experienced players in the transfer portal, do you think we can reload and have potentially a breakthrough season again next year?
I absolutely think we can. Like you said, the impact that Coach Burton made in year 1, this was the most regular season wins you've had in school history.
Yeah.
And I think they can just build on that. Like you said, there's graduating seniors, but I think Coach Burton has created very quickly a winning environment and a culture that girls are going to want to come in and play for. And I think, like you said, with the transfer portal, I think this is an attractive place because of the culture that Coach Burton has installed here.
And when you talk about culture, our men's team has established that the last few seasons. This year wasn't quite as successful as what we've seen the last few years. Stephen, I'll start with you, but what is your overall takeaway of the men's season and then, of course, our loss against a really good FAU team in the AAC tournament?
Yeah, it was tough for the men's because I feel that they also had a very talented team. I think at their best, they could have beat anyone in our conference, but at their worst, they struggled. So I think that they, could have been a lot better. I think it's just these key things, especially like, say, 3-pointers. They lived and died by the 3 all year long. Yeah. And, when they're hitting them, they're going, they're playing amazing. They feel like they can really be competitive. When they're not, you get games like the FAU game where they're so close, but they can't just quite come out on top. And I think the big thing also was some of the blown leads we had. There were so many games throughout the entire season that were so winnable. Oh, yeah. And just right at the end, our defense started to slip. And I think that type of effort, especially defensively, and then of course just getting more consistency shooting, this team could have been so much better. But I think that, if they can make some adjustments, especially in year 2 of Coach Hodge, I think they can have a much better season next year.
Yeah, I also want to add that when they played Tulane, they were 4 players got over or scored double figures, and they won. Then they went and played FAU. Only like 2 guys actually did really good. It was CJ Noland and who was the other guy?
Jason Edwards.
Yes. So, but yeah, I just think that they're very inconsistent, and I feel like they definitely need to have more guys getting higher points or getting points for the team instead of just 2 guys or 4 guys, you know?
And I think when you look at the UNT men's team this year, as Stephen, as you kind of mentioned it, we couldn't really close games. We had a ton of close losses. Talk about a team better than their record, and a great metric to look at that is like teamrankings.com. They come out with like their lucky and unlucky teams. Basically, these teams either maxed out or they didn't live up to like what their ceiling scenario was. And we lost a ton of close games. We were at the end of the regular season, we were ranked 359th out of 362 D1 teams. How do we change that next year? Stephen?
Yeah, I believe it because, I mean, I just feel like every game I watched, every single loss, we could have won. And that's something that you don't see in teams, and that's why I think this team can be competitive. I think it's just got to be coaching. There's got to be a little bit of shift. I think this team just wasn't aggressive enough, especially late in games. You know, sometimes they would get a little bit tired. Like you said, their over-reliance on particularly Jason Edwards. Yeah. We need other guys to step up offensively and especially defensively. Sissoko, you know, I think he has potential, but he just was too soft defensively. He let guys go all over him, especially in that last game. Vladislav Golden, that's why you lost to FAU, because he just pounded you on the inside.
Golden's a really tough matchup. That's why everybody had FAU beating Purdue last year in the tournament because of Golden against Edie. So, Lydiana, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really thought UNT, they were going to win against FAU, well, I hope, because yeah, you mentioned we've played them twice this season. We lost, but very close games. And so, like, maybe we would win, you know? Close games, we will win this one, you know, break the curse or whatever you want to call it. But sadly, it did not happen, but yeah.
So because we were so close and so competitive in so many games, it seems like it's manageable to turn things around, am I correct? Especially within just a few months' time when we go into next season. Yeah, and we're going to be returning a lot of players next year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what this team is next year. Maybe we can get a couple players in the transfer portal. It should be a really exciting year, and of course our conference is really tough. We're going to get that national recognition, and I cannot wait for that. And speaking of national recognition, let's look at the NCAA tournament overall. It's March, everyone. You got to tune into college basketball, and make sure you tune in to the next block. So stay with us right here on Sportszone.
Good evening, my name is Amanda Hasbell, and I'm joining you here today in the Union Parking Garage. Today we're going to be going over how to drive safely in the parking garage. Let's go see. Oh my God, this girl just got hit by a car. Let's go see what happened. Ma'am, are you okay? Did you see that lady hit me with a car? Yeah, we did. I got it all on video. Oh my God. Let's go over here and talk about how we can prevent that. Yeah, not the hospital. Well, right now we're going to ask you a couple questions on how we can drive safely in the parking lot. What are ways that we can be aware of our surroundings?
Oh, we can look both ways.
Jenna, also, how about putting the distractions away?
Yes, just like our phones, turning our music down, and also not focusing on our passengers.
Where can you get information on how to get a parking pass?
Transportation.unt.edu.
If you park in a garage, make sure you pay on the app or look for further instructions on how you should pay.
And remember, no pass, no park. Let's all try to keep our Mean Green community safe.
Remember, we're all in this together.
Drive safe.
Welcome back to Sportszone, everyone. I'm joined here by Nick Volpetti and Ben Wolf to discuss Selection Sunday. In my opinion, it's the greatest time of the year. It is the college basketball postseason. It's March Madness, everyone. All right, gentlemen, what are your thoughts overall on what the selection committee did yesterday? Ben, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think overall they did pretty well. The selection was great. I think there were a couple of teams which maybe were underrated a little bit, but I would say that especially with schools like South Carolina and especially UConn with how they performed last year, I think that overall the selections were good.
And then Nick, what are your overall thoughts?
Again, I agree with you, Ben. I think that it was a good committee, good choices. But the main problem I had was the Mountain West, I think, got underseeded. I think that a lot of those teams showed enough to be higher seeds than they were. I think New Mexico getting an 11 was a little low. I think Boise State getting a 10, having to play in the first 4. Yeah. I think that was just a bit of a robbery, in my opinion. I think they should have certainly gone into the first round.
Disrespecting the Mountain West there.
Yeah. I think they deserved a better fate than that.
Yeah, and so, Ben, I want to get your thoughts on maybe who you thought was overseeded or underseeded. Do you have like any overrated teams who you might be fading early on in the tournament?
Well, I would definitely say I think Auburn was underseeded. I mean, they were like rated 4th in the entire country?
I think they were like 5th or 6th in the power ratings or like in the net rankings,
And yet still they only made it into the 4th seed. I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. I thought we should have seen more from them. As far as overrated, I would say maybe Yale or UAB, you know? I mean, they performed very well, but there were a few upsets. I don't know if we'll be seeing as much from them as people were maybe hoping for.
Yeah, now, honestly, I was expecting Princeton to come out of the Ivy League, and then Brown beat Princeton, and Brown kind of choked there towards the end against Yale. I was pulling for Brown so hard in that game. The Ivy League, obviously a really smart league. A lot of the players play within themselves. They don't make many mistakes. Nick, do you think Yale could pull off a first-round upset?
I don't know. I think they've got a tough matchup. I think Yale's a good team, but I just don't know if they can stay with Auburn. I just don't know about that.
Yeah, Auburn's playing really well right now. In fact, when you look at Auburn's region, when you look at Auburn, UConn, Iowa State, arguably it's the best region and the toughest region in the entire bracket. Do you think it's going to be kind of chalk where UConn just wins and advances? Do you have any sleepers in this region? Nick, do you have any sleepers?
In my opinion, I think UConn's going to go, but I think that Iowa State could pose a challenge to them in the Elite Eight. If they make it through, get past, and get to the Elite Eight like I expect them to, I think that Iowa State could pose a challenge to UConn, but I think that UConn will ultimately come out. I think they're the best team in the country, fully deserving of the #1 overall seed, and I agree with the committee there on giving them the #1 overall seed, and I think they're going to end up winning the tournament, honestly.
Ben, do you think it's pretty much chalk? Do you think UConn's just going to win in advance? Do you have any upsets?
No, I think I agree with Nick there. I think Iowa has a really good shot. They've played very well, and I think that they have a chance to take it. Yeah.
Iowa State arguably has the best defense in the country right now. In fact, right now the metrics currently rank Iowa State's defense ahead of Houston. Oh, wow. And Houston is a team that everyone knows, like, oh, they have the best defense, but their offense is kind of iffy, although they have Jamal Sheed, who's one of the best guards in the country. Yeah. Of the 1 seed, so we got UConn, North Carolina, Houston, and Purdue. Are there any, obviously we've just discussed UConn, we feel pretty comfortable with them. So any of the other 3 1 seeds, do y'all feel like could get beat early, or do you feel like it's 1 seeds are going to advance? By the way, only once in the modern era of college basketball have all 4 1 seeds advanced to the Final Four. Do you think we're going to see that this year or not? Ben, do you think we're going to have all 1 seeds in the Final Four?
I think probably. I think there's a good chance that happens, but also with some of the schools like Houston and Purdue, I think that there's a little bit of wiggle room there for other schools to kind of come in and take that place.
And then, Nick, do you think it's going to be, again, chalk for the 1 seeds, or do you think there's like a 3 seed, like a Creighton or a Kentucky? Do you think we could see one of those teams in the Final Four?
I honestly, I don't think that all the #1 seeds are going to go. I think that Baylor is a really good team. In my bracket, I picked them to go to the Final Four, and they're in the same region as UNC, and I think they have a good chance to beat UNC if they end up going to the Elite Eight. Like you said, Creighton, they're a really good 3 seed. I think all the 3 seeds this year are really good teams and all have a good chance. And I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa State ends up taking down UConn in the Elite Eight. That's a matchup to watch out for also.
Iowa State is a really interesting team to me. They've overachieved in a lot of metrics this year. They came into the season unranked, and they finished in the top 10. In fact, if you were to go back, way back in history, 36 teams to begin the season unranked and then finish ranked. Of those 36 teams, none have ever reached the Final Four. Wow. So that could be bad news for Iowa State moving forward. We'll see. Although they're playing really well right now. They just beat Houston by 30 points in the Big 12 championship. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, nobody does that to Houston. So I think it is noteworthy. Do you see any double-digit seeds potentially making the Sweet 16, Nick?
The big one to me is New Mexico. I really
Thank
can't,
you.
I
Thank
cannot
you.
believe they're an 11 seed. I was stunned to find out they're an 11 seed. They're a really good team. They've got Jalen House, Jamal Mashburn. They can knock down the three. JT Toppin, the freshman out of Dallas. I mean, he's a great basketball player too. 63% from the field. That's 11th in the nation. I mean, they've just got some really good players. I think, honestly, I would be surprised if they lose in the first round against Clemson.
Let's go. We're both on the New Mexico bandwagon. Let's
Glad
go.
to see someone else
I've got
agrees
New
with me
Mexico
there.
in my Elite Eight, actually.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, they're if anyone's going to make the run, I think it's going to be New Mexico.
Okay, Ben, any Cinderella runs?
No, I think New Mexico is the only school that has any chance of doing that. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, I don't think it's anyone else. Yeah.
This is great. We are all on the New Mexico bandwagon. I love it. I was hoping we were going to have some New Mexico bandwagoners with me today. All right, let's discuss the women's. Now, this is typically a little bit more top-heavy. In fact, in the modern era of the women's tournament, since the field expanded in 1994, there has been only one 14 through 16, so 14, 15, or 16 seed to win the first round. So they are 1 in 347 in the first round, and 1 in 348 overall. Do we see any Cinderella runs in the women's tournament? Ben, do you see any?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe UT? I don't know.
Of course, they're a 1 seed. So.
Oh, true, of course, my mistake. Yeah, I don't know. It would be hard to say. I don't think any of the.
Of course, a lot of UT fans might think that's a Cinderella run based on expectations coming into the season. True. So yeah, but yeah, they're a 1 seed. Although I will say about Texas, I do worry about them a little bit. They're another one of those overachieving teams on the women's side. They've had a couple of injuries down the stretch. I don't know if they're going to live up to their number 1 seeding. We will see. That has to do zero with Texas bias. Like my dad went to Texas. I don't have anything against Texas. I'm actually a Texas fan, and I'm telling that truthfully. Do we see any front runners for the national championship? Do you think it's South Carolina and nobody else compete, Nick?
I don't know if no one else could compete, but I certainly think that South Carolina is the favorite. I mean, Dawn Staley, she's a legendary coach. She's built a great team again this year. Camila Cardoso, she's amazing in the paint, 9.5 rebounds per game. Tahina Paopao, 47% from 3. I mean, that is just incredible. They've got a really good team, really well-rounded. I think they can afford someone to have a bad game, and yet they can still win. They can still have a good performance even when 1 or 2 players don't play the best, and that's why I really believe in South Carolina and think that their 32-0 season is for real.
Okay, I'm going to be a little bit of a casual here, Ben. I'm going to ask you, does Caitlin Clark in Iowa have any chance to win it all?
I think so. I think they do have a chance. They've played very well, and I think she's a very strong player. I think it'll be hard, but it's definitely possible.
And I want to talk a little bit about Princeton on the women's side. So their men's obviously killed it this year. Their women's team, it's better than the men's team in terms of the net rankings for women's and men's in comparison. The women's Princeton team nearly went into UCLA and beat them earlier this season. And UCLA is one of the top favorites to win potentially the national championship in women's. Do you think Princeton could make a run, Nick?
I think it might be hard for them because they're a 9 seed, which means they have to play the 1 in the second round.
That's fair.
That's maybe the issue with them. Who would they face in the first round? I think it might be Iowa. That would be a tough matchup for them if they end up going into the second round. But like you said, they're a really good team. I always like to see those mid-major Ivy League type schools go.
Yeah.
So I'll certainly root for them, but I just think it might be tough against the 1 seed in the second round.
And Ben, we talked about the Cinderella runs. We've talked about maybe South Carolina, Iowa. Is there any 3, 4, or 5 seed you think that can maybe sneak into the Elite 8?
I'm not sure. Maybe Kansas. I don't know.
It's got a blue blood program right there. Maybe so. I know I'm going to be really looking forward to the women's tournament this year. I think this year it's really, really top heavy because this year, South Carolina, I thought they were going to be in a rebuilding year. They're going to call it reloading. And yet they're even arguably better than they were last year, which is just crazy to me. Okay, so what are your odds that South Carolina wins it? If we were to have 10 simulations of the women's tournament, and how many simulations does South Carolina win it? Nick?
That's a good question. I like the way you phrase that. I would say 7. I think that they're clearly the best team in the nation, but there's also a scenario where they could lose and get knocked out.
Ben, real quick.
I would agree. I think it's very likely that South Carolina wins, but also, there are a couple of teams who do have the potential to beat them, especially later on once we really see people play and we see who's really there to fight and who's not. I think I'd probably give it a 7 as well.
And next, coming up on Sportszone, we're going to talk about NFL free agency. So please stay with us.
There's no harm in wanting to have fun while in college, but it's easy to lose track of how much you've had. Apps like Drink Control and Alkadroit can help keep track of your consumption and blood alcohol levels. If you or someone else does drink too much, the signs of alcohol poisoning are as follows: pale skin, vomiting, confusion, low body temperatures, irregular breathing, blacking out, and is hard to wake up or cannot be woken up.
Dude, are you okay? Hey, what's wrong? Wake up.
It's an exciting time of year, but it's important to be responsible. If you suspect someone is suffering from alcohol poisoning, get help immediately. You will not get in trouble for seeking help if you are underage. For more info and resources, go to UNT's Division of Student Affairs.
Willis Library, located at the University of North Texas. It has computers, printers, and the building is open 24/7. By going online, you can book up to an hour of reserved space in one of the many private study rooms. Many of them are equipped with whiteboards, a table, and a TV to hook up to your computer. Textbooks can be checked out for free with a student ID. They also have many of these in ebook forms. This is still a library, so always remember to be quiet and respectful of other surroundings, especially in certain places where talking is not allowed. For example, the 3rd and 4th floor are completely quiet. As you can see, Willis Library has many options for students, with it offering many media sources and staying open all the time.
Welcome back to Sportszone, everyone. I'm your host, Connor Hibbett. I'm joined by Adam O'Day and Matthew Watson to discuss some NFL free agency. Okay, gentlemen, it's been pretty crazy this year, especially here recently with some of the free agency here in the market. Oh my gosh, it's just even crazier today than it's ever been. What team has made the best move so far? Adam, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I've got to go with the Eagles. Signed Saquon Barkley, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and with Jason Kelce retiring, they beefed up their O-line a little bit, signed guard Matt Hennessy. So, I mean, the Eagles were good to begin with, but I really like them to just improve upon their team, improve upon last year, and not lose in the first round again.
So the Eagles might be flying maybe finally.
Maybe.
Matthew?
Well, I agree with you. I think the Eagles definitely got better, but I think the bottom feeders of the league also got better. Like the Bears and the Commanders, like they got substantially better, I would feel like. The Commanders added on defense where they sucked last year. They hired Dan Quinn, who's, I would say, a free agency acquisition, hiring a new coach who's better than he was. And the Bears, right, they added Jalen Johnson, Mark Pryor, so they addressed both sides, and I think they're just going to continue to address both sides. And, you know, genuinely, the question can be asked now, are these winning teams? Like, I think that those two teams may have done enough to where you're like, they could have winning records this year.
So what are y'all's 3 biggest pickups so far? Matthew, I'll start with you this time.
Well, I went with the Packers with Josh Jacobs, the Ravens with Derrick Henry, and then to avoid another running back, I went with the Falcons and Kirk Cousins. I'll go down with the Packers and Josh Jacobs. They lost Aaron Jones, but Aaron Jones is a top 5 running back when healthy. Guess what? Josh Jacobs, probably a little bit better than Aaron Jones. So you know what? A good team that's young got better. The Ravens, they added Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, you know, his gas is not always premium anymore. But guess what? He still had 1,000 yards, over 10 touchdowns. I mean, he can do that again pretty easily with this Ravens offense. And then the Falcons with Kirk Cousins. The Falcons have been missing everything seemingly at the quarterback position. Desmond Ridder was trash. He was not good enough to do anything in the NFL. All he did was win at home. Well, you got to win on the road. Kirk Cousins, great addition, can get the ball to Pitts, can get the ball to London, can easily just hand it off to Bijan. So those are my 3.
Adam, what are your 3?
Yeah, so similarly to you, Matt, I went offense heavy. I went with Hollywood Brown, signing with the Chiefs.
A sneaky signing.
Oh, 100%. He's got great speed, and I believe he'll be able to succeed with Patrick Mahomes. And I also went with Derrick Henry. You know, the Ravens averaged over 150 rushing yards a game, which led the NFL, and 10 touchdowns in each of the last 6 seasons for Derrick Henry. So, I mean, he's a great addition to a run-first offense. And to spice it up a little bit, I went with defense for my last pickup. Patrick Queen going to the Steelers.
Yeah, it was a good signing.
Oh, yeah.
Former LSU guy, thank you.
Exactly.
Former Raven.
Exactly. Going in division, so a little spicy there.
Yeah, it
but,
was spicy.
That Steelers defense, top 10 in scoring defense and red zone defense, paired up with TJ Watt. So I'm excited for this Steelers defense.
So who are y'all looking forward to seeing play most on their new team? Adam?
Oh, I'm really excited to watch new Denver Bronco, Brandon Jones. I know I'm a little biased there. I am a Broncos fan, but
sorry to laugh at that. That was funny.
Yeah, but Brandon Jones, he's got a great frame, 6'1", 190. He's got great ball skills. Had 2 interceptions, 48 tackles last season. So I'm really excited to see how he fits, especially with Justin Simmons leaving Denver.
And Matthew, what about you?
I'm actually going to go with your first pick. You said the Eagles and Saquon Barkley. Sorry, Cowboys fans. It would be fun to see Saquon do what, Swift did, but then better. Because Swift is, you could argue, a good running back, but he's not elite. He's not Saquon Barkley. And you put Saquon Barkley in that rushing team, it's just going to be exciting to watch, to see how many yards that they can put up. And I got to go Kirk Cousins. I like Kyle Pitts. I like Drake London. It's nice to see them finally get a quarterback that stays in the pocket and that can throw to them. So I'm just ready for exciting offenses.
So we're talking about all this chaos in the market and the free agency, and yet the Cowboys have been rather stagnant. So, Matt, why are the Cowboys really not being as active here?
Well, spoiler alert, people. They don't want to win. I mean, it's simple as that. They don't want to win a Super Bowl. They don't care about winning a Super Bowl. They care about money in their pockets. If they wanted to win a Super Bowl, people, they would have never traded away Amari Cooper. That's a fact. If they would have had Amari Cooper, odds on, they would have better odds to beat the 49ers. But they can't even beat the Packers. I mean, they don't address the edge. Oh, I could go on and on and on. And all they're going to do is blame the cap. Well, guess what? The Chiefs just restructured Patrick Mahomes' deal to allow them to sign Hollywood Brown. And Cowboys could easily do the same thing with Dak Prescott. But they're just going to blame the cap.
Adam?
Yeah.
Why aren't the Cowboys being active here?
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed by the Cowboys' lack of moves. Their only real signing is Eric Kendricks, who...
Good player.
He's just aging. I'd love to see them, go after a defensive lineman. I mean, Micah Parsons, as good as he is, he's just a little too small to only play defensive end. So go sign somebody else.
So are there any trades or pickups that just don't make much sense to you, Adam?
Oh, I've got one for y'all. Sam Darnold getting $10 million. I mean, he's been in the league a while. He's only 26, but with how long he's been in the league, he seems just darn old.
There you go. I love the pun. Thank you so much for being punny here. Adam, don't leave me hanging. Wait, we're being punny. I've been punny here. Now Adam's being punny. Matt, do you have any puns, or do you just have a hot take here in terms of the trades that just don't make much sense?
So I will give a hot take right now. This is the first you're hearing it first. I haven't told anybody this. I think the Steelers messed up. I think Kenny Pickett was trash. No argues there, right? But you traded a garbage can for a self-automated garbage can that you wave your hand over. Because Russell Wilson, I mean, Sean Payton wanted him out of the Denver system so badly, right? Because he had his own guys in the locker room, his own wait staff in the locker room. Tomlin ain't going to put up with that. So how long is it going to be the Russell Wilson show for Pittsburgh? Because this draft is loaded. Why would they not move up into this draft and take one of the 6 quarterbacks that they could take that will probably be better than Russell Wilson in the next 5 years?
So out of all these free agents, who do you think is most destined to have a breakthrough season? Matt, I'll start with you.
So breakthrough, we're talking like Barkley, Henry, Jacobs.
Exactly.
We're definitely not talking Austin Eckler. So I'm going to go in the opposite of your question, and I'm going to talk about Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler joined the Commanders, right? He's a good running back. He's going to probably be tandem with Brian Robinson. But what we saw was, man, it's almost on empty. It's just not there anymore. Like, he's a great all-time Chargers running back. But they don't have many all-time Chargers running backs, right? There's just one, LT, and he's not that. And he's barely even a starter in the NFL anymore. So I just feel like that was a wasted signing, honestly.
Adam, quickly.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy, I mean, he hadn't cooked much with Russell Wilson as his quarterback, but I believe he'll be able to have some success in Cleveland.
And I know we're going to be cooking up some good shows here in the future on Sportszone, but that's it for us today. Guys, if you do not already, please make sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow our socials as well. That's it for today. I'm Connor Hibbett. I'm not sure if I'm going to be here next time. Maybe Mackenzie will be back, but I certainly had a lot of fun today. Guys, I appreciate you being on the show with me. Great analysts on the show, so please make sure to tune in next week on Sportszone. I'm your host again, Connor Hibbett. Go Mean Green.